Another week has gone by. You're a week older. When do you count your age? It's just on your birthdays? Because that's the only time you grow old, right? On your birthday. Rest of the time you're not aging. Because you wait a year and then all of a sudden you've grown old by another year. It's not been happening through the course of the year, it just happens on that one day of the year. That's how we grow old, isn't it? Well, you know the truth. Another week has gone by. Another 7 days. That's 24 hours of 7. Or 7 lots of 24 hours. Many minutes have flung us by. Time is fleeting by and we don't even know it. Just look back at your past week. How did you spend your time? How much of what you did last week was for the purpose of extinguishing the fires of Raga, Dvesha, Moha versus the time you spent indulging yourself in Raga, Dvesha, Moha? Oh, I'm sure you have lots of excuses. But Swaminatha, but someone came round, visitors, and I had no choice. I just had to go and talk to them about all the stuff I've been watching on TV. They forced me to go to the cinema with them. What can I do? Excuses, right? Now, isn't that so interesting? Oh, I catch you every time. Think. What are we doing? You've got to be more mindful than this. You've got to be more aware than this of what's going on. Buddhism is not the study about the universe. It's not study about the cosmos or how planets came into being. It's not a study about the Big Bang or anything like that. You know, at its core, Buddhism is nothing other than the study about oneself. It's a study about yourself. It's a study about who you are. It's a study about how you operate, how your mind functions, how your mind operates. And why, because of this ignorance of how you work, you get yourself into trouble so many times. This is what Buddhism is about. And to do that, you have to be mindful of how your mind works. If a sound comes from somewhere, why do you feel the urge to turn your head and look at it? Why do you feel the urge to find out what's going on? Why so much curiosity? You have to find some answers. You can't say just because. Well then, if you ask me, Swaminatha, why do I go to hell after this life? Well, I'm going to say just because. Is that all right? Then if you come and ask me, why do I suffer? Why am I always finding myself in stress and anxiety? I'm just going to say, well, just because. Is that a reasonable answer? Will you accept that from me? No. Well, if you don't accept that from me, then I think you should push yourselves a little bit harder. Don't do things just because. That's how we've been doing all these things in our lives. Throughout our lives, we've done a lot of things just because, have you not? It doesn't take a lot to turn back and look back at your past. A lot of things that you did just because, and look at where it got you. Now you're suffering the consequences of that. But when the consequences come and bite you on the back, well, they don't come and say just because. You can't turn them back and say, no, actually, you know what? I don't like you. Come back another day. It doesn't work like that. When it's time to bite you on the back, well, it's going to bite you back on the back real hard. So how was last week? I'll tell you what I did last week. About 6 or 7 hours a day was spent in meditation. much of the rest of the time was spent discussing the Dhamma with my fellow monks at the monastery, or with other ladies and gentlemen like yourselves who come and visit the monastery, preaching to them or talking to them about the Dhamma. So I'm talking about my week, and you can think about what your week was like. Surely you must have done lots of interesting stuff. Far more interesting than how my week would have gone, right? I'm sure. And then there was time I put aside to attend to my requirements, such as the 4 hours I put into sleep nowadays. Actually, it's working pretty well. Remember when I decided I was going to cut down to 4 hours? It's when I met someone just like you. A young gentleman about the age of 35 who I met after one of the sermons. He was a 3-wheel driver. That's his profession. And he was telling me about what a busy life he has. He has a family to feed. He has a job to do. He moonlights whenever he can, which is to do a job during the night as well. Does overtime so he can make sure his children are looked after and they have a future for themselves. And then he says, but when I'm doing all of these things, I never forget to listen to the Dhamma. I always have my earphones plugged in, and I'm constantly listening to the Dhamma, never missing a moment when I can do whatever I need to do to redeem myself from samsara. So when I was speaking to him, I was reminding myself, I'm doing pretty much the same things. So, we are pretty equal. Or so I thought. And then he said, so I only get about 4 hours sleep, Swaminathan. That was a jaw-dropping moment for me. I said, what? You do all that and you can get away with 4 hours of sleep? That's all you need? He said, yes. At that moment, I confessed to him. I said, oh dear sir, I am so ashamed of myself. I don't do half the things you do to toil your body day and night, and I have to resort to 6 hours of sleep. And I find that pretty pathetic. So from that day, I changed my schedule. And actually, it's going pretty good. It's going pretty well. And I also have a group of young monks who come and meet me at 7 o'clock every morning. Actually, all 4 of these are in that group as well. So I do a personality development exercise with them. Because when they're out in the public and, going to schools and things like that, and living in society, you get that kind of exposure. How? Well, you get told off. That's how. When you make mistakes, you get beaten up. That's how society teaches you what's good and what's bad. But of course, their parents didn't bring them here to get told off or to get beaten up. So there are other means and then there are better ways of teaching young children how to work on their personality. This is not about creating a self and fostering the self, because that's the kind of personality that I used to learn when I was in society. How to build a good ego for yourself. They never said that that's what you were doing. But ultimately, we all know what we were doing. It was feeding our ego every single time. Every time you went on LinkedIn and sent an invite to somebody, you were extending your network. Why? I know so and so. So everyone else in your network knows now that you are connected. Woohoo. Another friend on Facebook, that's always a good addition, isn't it? Another connection, just so you can show you're connected to other people. All these things feeding our egos. And a lot of skills we learned. How to get the most from your customers. How to trick them, but not even knowing that they're being tricked. So they said that was personality development, but underneath it was all about feeding the ego. So the program that we are doing at the monastery is very different to that. Every morning at 7 o'clock sharp, They have to be there, and I have a clock that I place by this Bodhisattva statue. And if they're a minute late, they have to go back. I will not accept them. Not a minute late. And when they arrive at 7 o'clock, they have to come clean shaven, having brushed and made their beds, and had breakfast, and all that, and have to be there 7 o'clock sharp. A minute late, turn back and go away. So 7 to 8 o'clock, there's a meditation program that I do with them, and then from 8 to 9:30, all the other monks in the monastery come and join us, and then we continue the meditation program. So this is how I make up my meditation. Like I said, it's about 6 to 7, 8 hours of meditation every day. So they help me and I help them. But that 7 to 8 in the morning, I dedicate for that group of young monks. So we have about 7 of them in the team for that at the moment. And you can ask them when you get a moment to speak to them. I'm not very lenient. I'm quite tough. If one makes a mistake, who has to suffer? Everyone, yes. If one makes a mistake, everyone has to suffer. The punishment is given to everybody. And the punishment involves doing things for the monastery, as well as the Sambuddhashasana, rendering a service of some kind. It could be sweeping the premises, whatever. And then everyone from time to time is given an opportunity to stand up on the stage and deliver what they understand about the Dhamma to the rest of the group. And then we pose questions. Difficult ones, not easy ones, not like the ones you ask me. We ask difficult questions. Questions that are intended to confuse them. Did I say I was ruthless? I'm not lenient, not with them. Because I want their parents to be proud of them. I want them to be proud of themselves, not through ego. I want them to understand where they have come, why they're here, what they're here to do, why they came into a robe, and what is the purpose of their lives. So these days they've got a project that they're working on. I've split the team in two. So I'm sharing these stories with you because I want you to consider how you spent your week. This is how I spent mine, and how your children might have spent their week. So we've split the team in two, and each team is expected to come up with 3 different ways of explaining and describing the doctrine, the Nyaya Dhamma, right? Taking one from a Pruthagjana to a Sotapanna. The key doctrine, the fundamental principles of what one needs to understand to go from being a Pruthagjana to a Sotapanna. 3 different ways. And they have to be creative. So you can't just come up and talk about the same stuff that Guru Hamdanu talks in his sermons or what I've been talking about. You have to be creative. So they can use craft for that if they wish. They can come up with a drama or some kind of video. They can be as creative as they like. So they've been talking to me, over the past week they've come to me with some of the ideas that they've put together as a team. I'm quite impressed, I must say. Perhaps when they materialize, I'll bring them along on a Sunday and I'll ask them to present to you. Would you like that? Because one of those ideas have to be in English as well. That is one of the caveats. They have to present one of those ideas in English, and I'll give them an opportunity, or rather I'll give you an opportunity to listen to what they have to say. So we'll do that one Sunday when you're here. So these are some of the things I've been doing over the last week. So how was your week? You know, what I remind myself every day is, I used to do quite a lot of personality development and helping people do that in my lay life. How does one give a presentation? How does one negotiate? How does one communicate effectively with others? How to influence people? But a lot of the time, these things I taught and I helped people learn. But these were people who were not interested in the Dhamma. These were not people who were interested in Nibbana.